Hello, welcome everyone. One moment, I will pop on screen. I'm so happy to welcome everyone here and to start our season of Parent Chat. So, welcome. For those of you who are returning, welcome back. And for those of you who are new, we're so glad that you found us. Balance of Mind is powered by the Lake Washington Schools Foundation and is really committed to making mental health resources and particularly conversations more accessible to parents in our district, and we welcome parents from beyond our district as well. Throughout this year, we are going to bring you a lot of amazing guest speakers that are going to talk about issues that really matter to you and to me and to the community. And so if you have a topic you would like addressed, you can simply drop that into the chat box right now and we'll take note, or you can email us. We're here for you and we want to make sure that we bring you the information that you most want. My name is Coach Sherry. For those of you who are new to the Parent Chat, I'm the founder of TeenWise, and in that capacity, I'm dedicated to empowering girls to ditch the girl drama and enjoy healthy friendships. And I'm also an advocate for teen mental health, which brings me here to facilitate the Balance in Mind Parent Chats. It's near and dear to my heart. Now, tonight, I want you to know, and with all these webinars, we don't want this just to be us talking at you. We really do want it to feel like a conversation. So yes, I know it's a webinar, but we're going to converse through the chat box and through the Q&A box. So as we go, we would love for everyone to comment if things stick out to you. You can definitely just let us know what you're thinking. If there's something that you're like, oh, that's an aha moment, you can put that in the chat box. And if you have a question, we highly encourage you to put that in the Q&A box, because that keeps it really neat and tidy for us so that we don't lose those questions. And we will I'll be looking at the questions as we go, but some of them we may have to kind of wait and delay a little bit. But we will try to get to all of them tonight. So tonight, without further ado, I'm very excited to introduce you to Mary Stevens, who has been a guest on our Parent Chat before, but we thought that her information was so powerful, we wanted to bring her back to start out our Parent Chat lineup with her. She's going to help us learn how to instill motivation for our kids, which is an issue. It's always been an issue, but with the pandemic, we've particularly found that this has become an issue for kids to be motivated in school. So with over 30 years of experience in the educational field and licensed as a mental health associate, she has dedicated her career to supporting adolescents and adults through life's challenges. So drawing on her own struggles as a youth, she understands the difficulties of navigating tough situations, and she is equipped to help others, including you, to do the same. So Mary, I welcome you to come on screen, and let's get started.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for the introduction. It's always a little awkward having somebody introduce you. I am at my office in Issaquah, and my lighting is terrible, but I figured that this is the best. These fluorescent lights do not light up well, and my 50-year-old self is not good under the fluorescent lights. So here we go.
We're glad you are here, and you look fantastic.
Motivation is always a point that we want to, I'm trying to see where my thing is. Okay. It's always a point that is a point of contention for parents, because we want kids to do their best all the time. And that's the first thing I want to talk about, is that in schools now, compared to when we were all there is a huge amount of curriculum. There is lack of support for things like study skills, organization, all of these things that in our brain are like, why didn't you learn this in school? There is so much coming at teachers, and it's all about content and creation and just go, 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 go. More than any time in history, teachers are the most educated they've ever been, and the most trained, and the most overwhelmed. That trickles down into our kids. And so when our kids go to school, we are thinking that it's the same school that we went to, and it is not. So tonight I want to talk about things that can help us help our kids find the motivation, find the why. And a lot of tonight kind of focuses on teens. However, this is top down. This is all kids and really all people. As I look at motivation for myself, and I'm sure that you can reflect on this yourself, we all have one or two things, if not more, I have more, that I wish I was doing better. I wish that I exercised more. I wish that I did not like processed food as much as I do. I wish that pasta was not my favorite food. I wish that I was more organized. I wish that I was not a clutter person. My husband teases me that in our next house, all the tables are going to be slanted so that I can't put anything on a flat surface, because if there's a flat surface, I will start to put stuff on it. And when I was younger, I would put stuff on it and I would know exactly where it is. And now that I'm in my 50s, I don't remember where things are. So I have a lot of things that I wish I was better at, but I no longer have anyone standing over my shoulder saying, why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing it my way? Why aren't you doing it better? Why aren't you doing your best all the time? So it's very important for us to step back and think of how are we evaluating our kids and how do we expect young people to learn that inside piece and the why for them. We have all built up reasons for ourselves to learn new things and to be better. All of us are on different paths with that. And we want to not expect too much from these little people, even when the little people are bigger than us. So in life, every single human wants to feel important and included. And our children are no exception to this. Everybody needs to feel acknowledgement, and they need to feel like what they are doing matters in the world. And so at home, when kids are behaviorally or any other way not listening to us or pushing back, we have to think, do they feel important and do they feel included? And we can only start with our house at first, because when I worked with teachers, I was a teacher coach for 8 years. And I used to teach them, we cannot, anything that's going on at home, we cannot control in schools. We have to take our classroom and then our school and decide what we're going to do to support and help kids. We can offer support to parents, but we cannot change parents. We cannot change the home. We cannot change the environment of the home, but we have absolute ability to do that at school. And so now that I am working with parents and adolescents and not educators, we have to do that ourselves. I cannot change education. That's why I left the education field, is because I realized that I was not going to be able to change it from within. As parents, we're going to hear all kinds of things from the media to our kids. Most of the time, kids are going to come home complaining about school. And by the way, we did too. We came home saying the teachers were mean. They never told us what was on the test. There's all kinds of things that kids say to us that make us kind of go, wait a minute, what's happening? And then you look on the news and it's very, very uh, pendulum and extremist, right? Kids want to feel important and included. And how can we do that in our home? Every kid has three key needs. One is autonomy, one is competence, and one is relatedness, connectedness. So autonomy is control, choice, agency. They need to feel like they have choices. When they were toddlers, we would give them choices like red cup or blue cup, right? Do you want your banana cut up or whole? Do you want your sandwiches cut in half or whole, or fours or halves? We were taught then to give them choices. As they aged, their choices got bigger and they felt more agency. They wanted to have more control. Competence is things like skills, practice. How are they capable? Are they capable? Do they feel capable? How do they feel capable? Being aware of when they come home and they don't feel like they had a strong day. And Instead of focusing on that, shoring them up at home and creating the competence at their house, right? Connectedness is belonging and relationship. When kids come into your room, and we're going to talk about this later on in these slides, how do we greet them? How do we look at them when they walk in? Do we only talk to them about what they're producing, or do we see the human behind it? Adults are very busy and we're very outcome oriented and we're stressed. And we have to remember that these little tiny people have these needs every single day. And sometimes it's being met at school and sometimes it's not. For encouragement and acknowledgement, we want to ask questions. My best skill in parenting is to get curious. We often want to give advice as parents because we have lived it. We feel like we've lived it. We have lived it. I often see things in my own two kids. I have a 17-year-old and a 19-year-old, and I see myself in both of them. And then I also see their strengths where I don't have strengths. But the things that get to me most are the things that they are similar to me and the things that I wish were better about myself. So when I get curious about who they really are, instead of assuming who they are, my relationship with them is better. So questions like, hey, what do you plan to do next with that? That's pretty interesting. We want to give them choices within. I just advised a parent today to say you can choose to be where you say you're going to be, or you can choose to stay home, right? Those are the two choices. And neither one of those are losing. You're not going to stay home and be punished, but you need to mean what you say. So limited choices. We're not going to give them 10 choices. When you say things like, I believe in you, you'll figure it out, you want them to have that feeling that I can do this instead of, when I was your age, this is what I did. When I was your age, I walked, what was it, uphill in the snow both ways, right? We are, in my family, we are starting to do a little bit of that. We always think that we did it better when in fact, if we had these, people who grew up in the 80s talk about how we're so glad they didn't have phones to record us. And now our poor kids are going to be on film all the time. We have to say to them, I know you can figure this out. I know that you can. Your ability is good. You're smart. You're a thinker. Go figure it out instead of fixing it for them. The other part is relatedness, that connection. And I see you and I notice you. And I mean you, not who I think you are, who I want you to be. I actually see who you are. These two slides, and I think Sherry's going to put these on the website, but these two slides are the framework of what every human needs. And if I gave a presentation to Microsoft or Amazon or Google, these are the same slides. To be a good boss, we have to be encouraging. We have to understand what the human need to feel important and included is. This is an example of things you can say. And as teachers from way back, we learned all kinds of different ways not to say things like, I like that, or I'm proud of you. We want to give it to the child, to the teen, to the people. Ask questions, ask what they're going to do next, and I often say things like, I'm noticing this. How do people your age deal with that? And I act kind of dumb. And actually, I don't usually know what people their age are going to do. They've got TikTok and Google and all the things. I had a 19-year-old today I see college kids on Zoom, and I had a 19-year-old today show me his Canvas. So we were looking at it. And on the top line, I saw Chat GPT. And I was like, oh my gosh, I see Chat GPT. Tell me how to do that. So we did it. And then he said, but here's what you have to know. And he showed me this hack that's a different website that you have to pay for, that then puts the same thing in and de-AIs it so that it sounds more like you, which is hysterical. And now I know something new. But if I had said, oh, you shouldn't use Chat GPT because you're not going to be able to, write, he would never have shown me that. So as parents, we want to be open and curious and exploration with them, right? We want to be that person for them. Here's the fact. People who feel better, they actually do better. A lot of a lot of parenting methods are, I remember when my kids were babies, people said, find their currency so that you can take it away. And I was like, oh, that doesn't sound so good. And then it does sound good when you get scared and you don't know what to do. Here's what I know. People who feel supported and feel secure actually want to do better. In a classroom, this looks like connecting and letting the kids know that you have expectations in a kind and firm way, and then building a relationship with the kids so they know that you like them and they actually like you and want to be around you. And that's how they want to perform in your class. So when they feel better in the class and they feel secure, they will want to do better. So I like to talk to kids and adults about respect. I was what I call a gifted offender in middle school. I knew exactly how to get kicked out of class, and I knew exactly what to do to make all of my teachers lose their mind. I was very buddy with the office people because I would go in there and they would put me to work. And I learned how, those of you who are my age, we had this machine that had purple ink and it smelled so good. And you would crank it like this and it would make copies on basically on carbon paper, and they would come out a little blurry. And I don't even know what the name of it is, mimeograph. I don't remember what it was, but I would do that because I would miss all my recesses. And then people would send me to the back office to do work. I went to a Catholic school, and it's also where I realized that all the teachers in the teachers lounge had that giant Gallo wine in the teachers lounge fridge, which does not happen in public education. And I don't know if they actually drank it, but I think they did. And I'm going to pretend like they did. But they used to say to me, Mary, show some respect. And I would roll my eyes and say, I am showing respect. And no one ever said, go look at your face, because I was not showing respect, but I didn't know how to show respect. My house, respect looked a little differently. And so I didn't know. Nobody ever said, here's what your face looks like. Here's what your words need to say. I had no idea. So I like to teach kids what this is. And in your house, respect looks differently than it does in the house next to you. We have to teach this kind of stuff to our kids. Now, if you have a 15-year-old and you're like, oh my gosh, I never taught him that. He's 15. Here's what I like to do with teenagers is I like to say things like, oh my gosh, I realize that I have not done this before. And I just wanted to have a conversation with you because I realize that sometimes I don't show you respect. And I learned this today and I want to share it with you. So just like, when you have a partner and they're adults, you giving them advice doesn't usually go so well. It's the same thing with teenagers. They are going to push back if you're trying to fix them. However, if you're working on yourself, brilliant. They're all about fixing us, right? Because we don't know anything. So I learned how to show more respect today. And you can even be telling this to somebody else on the phone or in your room, or have a family meeting and say, I learned something new. So the first thing is your face. And so for me, it was my eyebrows. I have permanent, like inch deep wrinkles right here because when I was my first couple years teaching, my face was like this all the time. Even when I was happy, I was so like concentrating. I wasn't really mad, but my face looked mad. So I learned that my eyebrows have to be up in order to show respect. And I wish I had learned this when I was 12 because I would not have been in the office so much. My eyebrows are up, and nobody's going to think I'm angry at them if my eyebrows are up. Next thing is tone of voice. Tone of voice is so important. And again, the first 10 years of my marriage, I think I argued with my husband about tone of voice because he would say something and I'm like, you just called me stupid. And he's like, I did not call you stupid. And I'm like, you did with your voice. You did. Your tone of voice is saying you're stupid. And we would go rounds with this, right? The tone of voice in kids that are defensive or that know they did something wrong is often very aloof, and it triggers something inside of adults that's like, he doesn't care enough, and I'm going to make him care, right? Or her. I'm going to make them care about this. So the tone of voice that we have, we need to be careful as parents. And I'm telling you this every single day that I walk into my teenagers, who, by the way, have socks all over the floor. The dishwasher's not unloaded or even looked at. Dishes are in the sink. All the things, right? Teenagers are a hot mess most of the time. So I walk in, and if I say, hey, could you guys take out the trash? I'm going to get a much different reaction than if I say, oh gosh, next time you guys get up, if you could take out the trash, that'd be great. Totally different. I'm not begging them still, but my face and my tone are not, I don't get tight about it. Even though inside I'm like, are you kidding me? I've been working all day and you've been sitting here. Face and tone are huge. The last thing are words. And when I teach this to kids, I talk about the fact that I could walk into any room and go, yeah, I'm really excited to see you guys. I really like you a lot. And they go, yeah, that's not believable. But if I walk in and say, oh my gosh, I really don't want to be here tonight, and we're not going to have a good time, people would be a little confused because my face and my tone are up, right? And this is why when you travel to other countries, I always have taught my kid, watch what their face and tone are doing, because we might not know their language, but if they're frowning and grumpy, then we're doing something wrong, and you freeze and stop doing what you're doing. If they're happy and just talking, you just kind of smile and keep doing what you're doing. It's okay. That has nothing to do with the words. It's face and tone, right? We want to practice this with our kids. We also want to have a way to say, whoa, I want to try that again. And almost every day I end up saying something, especially to my 19-year-old who was home from college. I say something that's just irritated and I have to repair it, right? I have to go, well, let me try that again. And I try it again. I'm teaching him how to be imperfect and how to fix myself so that he can learn that. Okay, here's some funny examples of face. These are the positive faces, right? This is the, and boy, are kids sensitive to these faces. I read some statistic, which makes me laugh. I always wonder how they get all these statistics, but adolescents have about, they misinterpret our face like 75% of their lives. And so I remember when my kids were a little smaller, I would walk downstairs and my older son, who's very sensitive, would say, why are you mad? And I was like, I'm not mad. I'm just doing dishes or something. But I had this grumpy face. And so I had to learn that when I was around my kids, I needed my eyebrows up because they would think I was mad at them. I don't want that. And boy, my dad had a look. Every time I looked at him and I was saying something that he didn't like, I knew immediately. And I can still picture it in my head. I was like, oh, jeez, here we go. He doesn't like what I'm saying. Okay, I love this. It's not what you said, it's how you said it. And truly, I still say that to my husband because he does. He says it with that little at the end of it. Okay. Sherry, are there any questions that I should pause for?
We have a couple. I think they'll probably be fit in later.
Okay.
I'll tell you what they are, and you can decide. One is, how do I motivate my kid when I only see her for a weekend every 2 weeks?
Oh, yeah, I got that.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
Yep.
And then the other question, this one I think we'll all relate to. Some teenagers have selective listening. They don't basically ignore anything parents say if they can. Um,
Yep.
with headphones, etc., this makes it easier. How do we parents get through this?
Love that. Boy, is that not every single kid, those earbuds.
Yeah,
Okay. So, yes, I will get to both of those questions. I wrote them down and I will come back because yes, yes,
excellent.
yes.
Alrighty.
So when we think of, and this kind of leads to the headphone thing too, or AirPods, buds, whatever people call them. Um, when we think of what we expect from kids, we really want to make sure that we're on the right path. And so what happens is, I remember one time I went and visited a kindergarten classroom, and these were these teeny, I always taught upper elementary or middle school, and then I was a school counselor in high school. And kindergartners to me are like little tiny kittens and they're adorable. I could never teach them because they're so cute and crazy. But I went to this kindergarten classroom and they were sitting in this circle and they were passing some science thing around. They were absolutely adorable. And at the end, and it was obvious this teacher had done so much work in teaching the routine, teaching all the things. So afterwards, the kids went to recess, and I said to her, I'm like, this was so impressive. These kids obviously knew exactly what to do. You must have put a lot of work into teaching this routine. And she said, oh my gosh, they were supposed to blah, 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 blah. Like she just was, so, her expectations were through the roof for these teeny tiny 5-year-olds. What happens to us with our own children is the same thing that was happening to her by February. She thought they were like 15 years old because she knew them so well. In our own house, we get to know our kids very well. Oftentimes, we project expectations on them because we think that they should know them because we have said it 5,000 times, right? What I'm learning, and I learned the hard way with my own children, but also in school, is it doesn't matter how many times we tell them things, their brain is developing. And it is a very, I call it a squishy brain because their frontal lobe is growing and learning at the speed of light in adolescence. The only other time that it grows as much as it does in adolescence, which by the way is like 10 to age 25, it's a giant amount of time, is when they're toddlers. Remember when they were like 1 to 2 and they would do something and you're like, oh my gosh, they just started speaking full sentences overnight. It's crazy. That is a huge time of growth. And then they're cute, so it's easy. Teenagehood is the same. Their brain is completely remodeling and it is squishy and making all kinds. Add on to that their hormones are all over the place. Most of the time, if we say to a teenager, what are you doing? They're like, if they were honest, they'd be like, I have no idea what I'm doing. So this is a book that I've had different copies of it all the way through my career. And it has saved me with my own children. The copy that I have actually has a yardstick on it, and it is weathered. It is threadbare. It is missing pages. But every time I started to get frustrated with my kids, I would go to the 6-year-old part and I would go, oh, thank goodness this is normal. Because when you only have one 6-year-old in your house, you're not sure what's normal. And if you go on Facebook or Instagram, it looks like everybody else has this figured out. And I don't know about your group of friends, but a lot of my friends, I would say, oh my gosh, I'll never forget the first time I said my 5-year-old or 6-year-old, I can't remember, said, I hate you. And they were like, oh, my kid would never say that. And I thought, oh, I have a demon child. Expectations can get large if you compare with society, because not very many people are telling the truth. And this book is helpful. It's more helpful than the web, in my belief. The web is a deep hole. But this you can look up and see what is typical for brain development. This is not oh, I'm just going to tell you my anecdotal experience. This is brain development. And it's very bullet point friendly so that you just look at it, get an idea, and then move on to doing whatever important thing you're doing. So before we put things on our adolescents, we really need to think, is this typical? Now, this is 4th through 14. High school ages has some things online that are also good. And it is a little more helpful to know that the reason I think the reason this hasn't gone up is because it varies so much in high school. I have one client that's in 9th grade that looks like he's in about 5th grade. And I have one client that is in 9th grade that is 6'4" and almost 200 pounds. So that's just body, right? Their brains are just, and they basically have the same brain actually. So you just don't know. They look big, they look small. You have no idea. So this is a hard time. I'm going to skip that part real quick and come back to it. I forgot that I had the fancy thing. Okay. So when we think about how to connect with our kids, I want you to think about values that you want your kids to walk out of when they're 18 years old and they're walking away from you, either your house, in a school, in a job. I had one adolescent go to live with her aunt in North Carolina at 18, and she is working. It's super interesting. She's working in this craft thing with her aunt that's nationwide, and Hollywood buys costumes from them, all these things. So when she walks out to go do this amazing artistic thing, what values do you want them to have? Respect, integrity, effort, hard work, right? All of these things. I want them to know that they need to not give up on things. Whatever you come up with, I would suggest single parent partners sit down with your co-parenting people and say, what do we want? What are values that we want them to walk away with? And then I want you to think, how did you learn those values? I did not learn values by someone yelling at me or shaming me or punishing me and sending me to my room. I didn't learn those values that way. The way that I learned the values that I hold dear are by adults that connected with me and modeled some of it, first of all. I learned by having a mom who unconditionally supported me, not perfectly, right? Like all of us are not perfect, but I knew she had my back all the time. I learned them by seeing role models in my life, either, sports role models, Hollywood role models, and learning what they did to get where they want to go. I learned by looking at my aunt, who is a child psychologist, saying, these are the things that you need to do to get there. She was not mad at me when she was doing that. She was supportive and including. How do we learn the important things in life? I remember being sent to my room when I was little. I was still into Cinderella, so I was fairly little. And I remember crying into my room and thinking to myself, I must be adopted, and Cinderella is my real mom, and she's going to come save me. That's what people think about in their rooms. They think about how much they hate their parents and how much they can't wait to get out of the house, right? When they're at school, they go into detention and think about how much they hate school. None of that is, I'm going to do better and I know I can do it. So we have to think about, in a workplace, how do people get motivated? Well, at work, you get paid. So, and I know adults are like, yeah, but that's just a job. Well, yes, but kids don't get paid to go to school, nor do we want to pay them, by the way. We do not want to pay kids for things that are good for them anyway, if that makes sense. I don't want to do that. I want to only pay kids when it's something that I want them to do for me, like an allowance, something like that. When you have a relationship with your kid and you guide them and nurture them like training wheels and like the bumpers on a bowling alley, they want to be with you, and then they learn from you. It's the same thing with teachers that you cared about, right? We all know the teachers that we really liked. I worked the hardest for the people that I liked. Bosses. My principals that I worked the hardest for were the ones that connected with me as a human, not about my teaching. They asked about my kids. They asked about me. They cared about me. They saw me for more than my output. John Gottman has a thing that is a marriage thing that I really believe in putting into homes with kids as well. It's called the magic ratio. And in the John Gottman world, he calls it 5-to-1. He says 5 positive interactions to 1 correction. And with partners, that is such a good idea. And in my world, almost incompletely possible. This is a giant ratio for me to do with my husband. However, with kids, I think if I can get 3 positives before I tell them to take out the trash or I tell them to pick up their socks, I am winning. Even 2. If I can just come home and be with these kids and enjoy them for a heartbeat, when I ask them to do something, it will go better. So when we make eye contact with our kid, that's huge. And I know that sounds silly. I remember when I was like 28 and I thought I knew everything. And I heard a study that said This new study says that every parent should spend 20 minutes of FaceTime with their kids per day. And I remember thinking, first of all, why did we need a study for that? And second of all, who doesn't see their kids for 20 minutes a day? And then I had kids and I was like, oh, right. It's hard. Sports, whatever's going on, work, whatever's going on. It's crazy, right? So they come home, you make dinner, you got to do homework, you got to do bath time, da, 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 da. It gets very busy. How often do we just sit there and talk to our kids or just be with them without a to-do list? Making eye contact with our kids is very important. Assume positive intent is another one. And again, it works with our partners too. If our kids say something mouthy, let's assume that they didn't mean it or that they're in a bad spot instead of stop talking back to me, right? Assume positive intent. Smiling, nodding, winking, doing the things that go, yes, I got you. Welcoming. I remember when my oldest was a year and a half old and he never slept at night. So he usually would take a good nap. Every once in a while he'd wake up and we had a really small house and he would wake up and come toddle out. And I realized that every time he toddled out too early, I was like, oh my God, I can't believe you're awake already. And I heard something on Oprah back then that said, think about how you welcome your kids when they walk in the room. And I was so thankful that I heard that, because then I started, even if I didn't feel it, I said, yay, you're awake. And he'd come running to me and give me a hug, because I want, and even now, like when I see my teenagers, hey, I'm so excited you're here. And I give them a hug. Now, I have two boys that are both way taller than me. They don't want to give me a hug every time. They think I'm a little ridiculous, and it's okay. Teenagers are not supposed to be super welcoming back. We have to put our egos at the door when we have teenagers. Provide positive feedback. I always want to be thinking, what are they doing correctly? I don't know a teenager that doesn't do most of their stuff. I mean, and you got to remember, I'm a therapist. I see things that are, I have kids that are definitely in need and they are making a lot of big mistakes. I have one right now that's making big mistakes. And when you sit and talk to this boy, he is the most interesting, deep person. And I get to say that to him. This is so interesting what you're talking about. I want to help you find things, like ways to do that that's not illegal, right? That's not going to get you in trouble. But wow, this is what this means. You have got all this some interesting ideas. Let's provide the positive feedback so that they can build. Maintain an attitude of respect and support, even when correcting. We often think because they're messing up that we get to be disrespectful, and we have to check ourselves. We have to, because we are modeling for them what grown-ups do, and we are also modeling for them what they can expect somebody that they say they love the most in the world to do, right? That's all part of us. I realize as I'm talking that so much of this is about us, and that is exactly the message. We often think that motivation comes from a carrot or a stick, right? Like, how can I bribe you or how can I punish you? And the loudest message that I can say tonight is, if something is going wrong with your teens or your kids, instead of dealing with what's going wrong, focus on what's going right. And every once in a while, it's okay to say to your teenager, I'm noticing that this is a pattern for the last week. And I'm not going to dive too deep into the thing because they don't want to hear us harp on the problem, right? I'm noticing that when I ask you to do something, you don't do it. All that says to me is that you need more time with me. When would Thursday or Friday be better for going out to dinner with me? I think we need to have coffee once a week together. Would Friday morning work best or Saturday morning? We must spend time with our kids without talking about a problem in order for them to feel connected to us, to want to do better. That is the key to motivating kids. Research indicates that you can improve behavior by 80% just by pointing out what they're doing right. And when your brain is starting to focus on what they're doing correctly, it will blow you away how much they really are doing stuff. It's amazing. And I have this wonderful role, or did, in the schools where I would go into a classroom to support kids that were kind of being naughty, right? That was me. But meanwhile, I got to see all these kids that knew exactly what to do. 2 weeks ago, I went to Skyline's football game, and I hadn't been to a football game since before COVID. So it was overwhelming at first, but amazing. Then I sold concessions there the whole like second quarter on to the end of the game. It was so busy, by the way. Good Lord. You want to work out? Go do that. I was taking orders constantly. Like I was on the front lines the whole time. Every kid came and ordered stuff at the speed of light, like both sides, all kids, all parents. By the end of the fourth quarter, I was like, oh, you know, it's funny because if you watch the news, all the youth of America sucks and they're disrespectful and they're mean and they're don't have manners and they all these things, right? I mean, you watch the news. By the way, I don't watch the news anymore, but when you watch the news, it depresses you, right? You kind of think, well, gosh, the youth of today. Here's what I'll tell you. I sat there and I was so impressed by the kids from Eastlake and from the kids from Skyline because they were respectful, they were kind, they said thank you. If they didn't have cash, they had a card. And you know what they said? Hey, do you guys take cards? With this nice tone of voice. And we did, and they were like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad. Like they were so unbelievably kind. And that is where our kids are. But if we focus on the fact that then they go be yahoos in the stands, right? And we focus on that, we focus on all the things they're doing wrong. Just like me, when I was a teenager, I'm like, screw that. I'm not going to do it. Sorry. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do what you want me to do because you think I'm not going to do it. I have teenagers every single week in my office that say this to me, which I love. They say, here's the thing. I was going to do that, but then my mom told me to do it. And so then I didn't do it. And every time a kid says that, I'm like, is that true? Is that true? Do you really do that? And they're like, yes. If she reminds me and I'm like, well, what about when you don't do it? Because this is my life, right? They're not doing the thing. So I ask them as a mom, not as a therapist, how can I get them to do the things that they don't do that I want them to do? And they said, any other way than just telling them. Write them a post-it note, text them, have a expectation that it's done by this time, and then just believe that I'll do it. I had one mom text her daughter 2 hours before the deadline or whatever and say, I can't wait to see the trash bins on the curb. Like just little hints. That is better than, that's what the teens are telling me. It's better than that direct, because what it implies is they're not going to get it done. And then they're like, bite me, I'm not going to get it done, right? Put yourself in the teenage world again of like, they're supposed to kind of push back and rebel. Look for what they're doing correctly. Here's what we can't control. We can't control this in kids. We can control it in ourselves. But everyone, I'm going to say stuff to my kids that they get mad about. And here's the skill that I'm going to teach you tonight that changed my life. I often say to my youngest one, especially, what is the deal with secondborns? Secondborns, I'm convinced, look at the fact that we didn't kill or maim the firstborn. So then they're like, well, I'm going to push it because they're not going to kill me or maim me. So I got a lot of room here. Secondborns got no problem breaking all the rules. And so they will say to my secondborn will say, you could take away everything in my world and I would be fine. And I believe him. So I will say to him, hey, could you do this? And he just looks at me like, are you kidding me? And he won't do it. And I can't control that. So what I can say is, I need you to do it by midnight tonight. I can't wait to see it done. And I leave it. Now, if that said child, and this has happened many times over his life, he doesn't do it once, and then the next day it's still not done, then I see a pattern. And I say, hey, I'm noticing that when I ask you to do stuff, you don't do it. And I know that most of the time, now, even if he doesn't do it most of the time, here's what I'm going to say. I know that most of the time, when you want to do something, you do it. Actually, that is true. When he wants to do it, he totally does it. So I'd love to talk about what's going on, but more than anything, what that says to me is you need more time with me. And in schools, I used to tell kids, you are inviting me into your life. I'm so excited. And I really meant it. Like, I believe that if they're not doing what I want them to do, they need to spend more time with me, not shaming them, not punishing them. If you are rebelling against me, I need more time with you. We need to go shopping. We need to go to Starbucks. We need to go to Jamba Juice. We need to go on a walk. If your kid says, I'm not doing any of that with you, then you need to schedule a weekend. Like, we want our kids to want to spend time with us. And teenagers never do, by the way. They don't act like they do, but they really do. We cannot allow our kids to go unmoored. We are their roots. We have to be in the bottom of them and saying, I got you, right? I like you even when you are being like this. I love you. I am not leaving. I am the bumpers to your bowling alley, and I'm bumping you back into, I love you the most in the world, and I'm not going to let you not learn the skill of when you are not getting along with someone, you have to lean in. Since COVID, I have noticed that a lot of people are scared of that, and kids feel very isolated. Something I always ask kids is, when's the last time you had fun with your family? My own kids would be like, I never really have fun with my family. That's what they would say. We have something called forced family fun, and we schedule it, and they just get to show up. Like, that's what we do. We do forced family fun. And so many of our forced family fun pictures of the four of us, we all look happy. I never post on Facebook anymore because I think it's stupid, because we all look happy and they are complaining 100% of the time. And I let it go. I call myself a duck. Like, I quack, quack in my head, quack, 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 because I let it roll off my back. Teenagers are built to complain about everything. Every trip we go on, they complain the entire time. It is very difficult to take teenagers anywhere. They will complain and complain and complain. And we have to just say, so glad you're here, right? Sometimes teenagers, I laugh because it's almost like I'm back in high school again, and everything I do is criticized. Everything I say, I'm stupid. Everything I do is dumb. And I have to have friends. I have to have a life outside of my kids, because they shore me up. And then I come into my kids and I have to not take it personally, right? I have to. Okay, tips for keeping it positive. Number one, take care of yourself. Do you remember when they were little and they said, oxygen mask on the parent first? I remember thinking, no way am I doing that. If I don't do that, I'm lost. They die. We both die. You have to take care of yourself. And sometimes that's going to require you learning how to do that again. That is me right now. Like, in the last 3 years, the kids know, my kids, my boys, about 3 years ago, I said, I'm not going to be around sometimes because I have to build a life, right? I have to figure out what I like and what I want to do. So take care of you. That's why you do it, is so that when they give you mouth, they talk back to you. My mom always used to say, you're giving me lip. When take care of you so that you don't care. My worth is not dependent on a teenager, right? Because they are hard. The other thing is, keep your expectations realistic. This is what my yardstick book looks like. Make sure that you're knowing that when we were 16, we were little buttheads too, right? We really were. We think we weren't. We were. I didn't want my parents' opinion ever. I thought they were dumb, right? And, I find myself arguing with my kids that I'm not a boomer because my mother is a boomer. And then I'm like, why am I arguing with them? The shoulder shrug is the best skill that you will have. My 19-year-old, I'll say, this is what you can do tomorrow. And he'll go, I don't want to. I think that's stupid. And I go, and I walk away. I'm not arguing with terrorists, right? Like, I'm not doing it. I am absolutely letting them be unhappy, and it's okay with a relationship. Okay, clearly state your expectations in advance. This is huge. So if something is going wrong in your house, think, have I taught the expectation? Have I said, by the way, if you're out and about and you choose not to tell me where you are, then tomorrow night you won't be going out. You choose this, but it's all light. I don't hate you, right? I'm not punishing you, but you set it up ahead of time instead of saying, now that you do that, you can't do this. Set it up. And all you have to do is like go, oh, something's going wrong. How can I come to a solution with this? And if they're 15 and above, I would sit down with them and say, I'm noticing this is happening. It sits funny with me. I always used to tell my oldest one, this is the first time I've ever had a 16-year-old. I'm trying to figure it out. What do you think we should do? I want to know where you're at. Obsessively so, sometimes, I admit. You don't. What can we do? And we come up with solutions together. Because we have a strong relationship, because we've spent time together that's forced but fun, right? Communicate effectively. All of us have our own issues with communication. I do it. I, avoid things that are hard. I don't want to argue. Loudness makes me intimidated, all the things. I've had to do my own work on myself so that I can communicate effectively with my teenager. The other part is notice what they're doing correctly. Look around and notice. I put these tiny little pictures on here because nobody would look at that little monkey and think, oh my gosh, you're a menace. But when they get to be teenagers, we think, ew, you are a menace, right? You're not cute anymore. And you're disrespectful, you're this, you're that. That little panther, super cute. I have toddler books that I put together for my kids. And when I'm about to lose my mind with them, I go get them out and I make them sit down and look at the book with me because I can tell them how cute they were then. And I remember how cute they are still. It helps me get my mindset back. When they were younger and they would argue, we had these things called brother books, and there were pictures of the two of them together little. And I would make them sit down with me and look at that. I'd go, oh, must be time for a brother book. And they'd be like, no, not the brother book. Put our brains into a positive state so that then we can deal with each other. Okay. I'm going to go back to the main slide, which is motivation. We have got to remember motivation is about all of these things. And this is what school focuses on, by the way. It's performance, it's outcome. I am here to say loudly that motivation is all, where's my fancy slide, about relationship. This is all it's about, honestly. When you have a positive relationship with your kid and they know that you are respectful about it, you're curious about them, you want to know about them. We move from managers when they're little into consultants, right? When you are in a business and something's going wrong, you hire an outside person that's a consultant. The consultant comes in to tell you news that you don't want to hear. They pick out what you're doing wrong. They want you to fix it. It's critical information, right? It has to be. That's what you need. Consultants, if they do it negatively and shaming, you get defensive and say, you don't know what you're talking about, and they step out. As a parent, you want to lean in gently, kindly, guide, be interested, ask questions. Build a relationship with your teens so that they want to be with you. And that's how you get influence, so that they come to you and say, I don't know what to do. I just made this big mistake. That's where you want to be. It's about the relationship with your kid. Okay. I will stop there, Sherry, and we can do questions. Okay, I did get
Wonderful.
that question about the two when I only see them every other weekend.
Yes, we'll start with that one. It's a good one.
It's a great one. And I have probably 5 families right now in my practice that have divorced families. And most of the time, the divorced families are very different, right? There's reasons you get divorced and choose other things. So there's that. And they don't always have great communication because they don't want to, right? It's hard. One thing is to make sure that at least with some expectations, you can have some commonalities between the two homes. Ask the kids what's going on that we can make. How can we make my house this way, even though the other house might be other ways? And work hard at eyebrows and not judging the other house, right? I have certain beliefs and expectations, and your dad has other ones. And by the way, this happens in intact families too, by the way. My house for sure. I mean, I'll never forget when my 6-year-old came in with a giant thing of Coke. I was like, oh, and we're here now. Like, that's not what mom would do. So ask the kids. Like, so here's the thing, you have 2 homes. What's hard about it? What do you need support with? Right? Here's what we want in our house. Here's what they want in their house. Fine. But this is what we're going to do in our house. How can we bridge it for you? If you really listen to the kids, what they'll tell you, say, but I have to be safe to say it. They have to be able to say, you know, when I'm at your house, you're so nitpicky about everything. And it makes me paranoid that I'm going to forget to do something and get in trouble. I am literally a mom who kids said that to me. I would go up to the cabin and my husband would already be there with the kids for a couple of days. I would go up and my son said, I don't like it when you show up. And I was like, what? He was like 10. And he goes, you know, when dad's here, everything's relaxed. And then we clean up everything before we leave, but it's relaxed while we're there. You show up and you want us to pick up the chips thing, pick up the glass, put the stuff away. It's just constant. I'll be honest, I felt like I got punched in the stomach when he said that, but I listened. And the next time we went up, I said, okay, I'm going to try to relax. It was about me. It wasn't about them. They always pick up at the end. He's like, we always do it. We just got to just, you know, I mean, he didn't say this, but like, get off us, right? Like, I kind of was powering it. So ask your kids, how can we make this better for you? I would have loved to have been asked that when my parents got divorced when I was 15. How can we make this better for you? Isn't that a good question?
That's
Ask the
good.
kids. They're the experts. Selective listening is a thing. Oh boy, is that a thing. Again, husbands too. Here's the thing. We often think that because we want to say it, they better darn well be ready to listen, right? Like, but I need it now. And my kids, luckily, you know, and they'll say, well, I was raised by a counselor. They know to give me feedback, sometimes too much. But they'll say to me, you know, you act like I have nothing going on in my life. And whenever it's your priority, it has to be my priority. And I mean, it was probably a couple times of them saying that I was like, well, if you would have done it before, I wouldn't be saying it now, right? Like I would frustrated. And then I realized that that's exactly what I was doing. Take out the trash right now, even if they're in the middle of something. And even if the middle of something was TikTok, it's still important to them, right? And I'm judging that. I don't want them sitting there on their phone. It makes me mad, all the things. So here's what you can say. Hey, I need to talk to you tonight. When would be a good time? Or I see that you're busy. I'm going to be back in 5 minutes and we need to talk about stuff that needs to get done tonight. Give them a warning. Let them know that you respect them as the human they are. We need to stop judging what they're doing because our generation is very good at saying, yeah, but the phone, all the tech stuff, you know, we sound like dinosaurs sometimes. Even like the chat GPT thing, we're so judgy about everything, right? You have to stop the judgment so that they lean into us. Or you could say, hey, I notice sometimes when I ask you to do stuff, you don't hear me, even though you should be hearing me. We have a thing in our house that they came up with that if they have earbuds in the house or in the car, they only have one in so that we can still hear humans. And they came up with that. I didn't. I just said, here's the thing. I don't want to have to hit you to get you to listen to me, right? And I just said, I don't know what to do. And so they came up with that. So ask them, partner with your kids, just like a consultant in a business, partner. We have to learn how to say the hard things respectfully. We have to learn, we want to walk away from them saying, oh, I want to hire that consultant, right? When they're 25, I want them to go, I choose that person to be with me, instead of looking at the phone and going, oh, it's my mom, right?
Right.
I tease teenagers that I'm teaching people how to talk about the hard things, because in America, we just complain about holidays with our parents instead of learning how to talk about things, because nobody wants to talk about it. We have to talk to our kids.
Okay, Mary, we are running out of time. So let me ask you one last question here.
Okay.
Actually, I should say we're out of time. We're a little bit over 8.
Mm-hmm.
When you say support unconditionally, what if they're doing something wrong? Obviously, you cannot be supportive in those situations. How would you answer that?
Okay, so if they're doing something wrong, what do you do?
How do you still be supportive? Yeah.
So it depends on what it is. If they are, um, okay, so extreme example is they're bullying somebody at school and they think it's fine, right? Again, what I know is they need more time with me. They need to learn from me. They don't need to be punished and isolated. No one learns skills alone. When I learned how to ski, I didn't go to a mountain by myself for hours and hours. I went and got a ski coach, right? So we have to partner up with kids and say, oh gosh, I just realized that maybe you don't know how to do this. So I'm going to teach you. That's one thing. Gently. So if they're doing something wrong, like pulling the dog's fur, even when they're little, like anything that's like really you need to stop the behavior. And in schools, this happens all the time. I like to bring my eyebrows up and go, whoa, what's happening? Like ask a question, right? What's happening? And they'll go, oh, well, I thought that I could do this and this and this. And you're like, oh, I see. Okay. So here's what I meant, right? Here's what's supposed to happen. Like get kind of instead of mad, right? So gently stop the behavior and show and tell a different way. When my kids were little, they decided that throwing balls in the house was fantastic. So instead of saying no balls in the house, I have boys, I have 2 boys, there's balls in the house. I made the hallway closet. I put those gym mats kind of from Costco around the inside. And when they would throw something, I'd go, oh, let's go to the closet. And we'd run to the closet and they'd throw it in there. Give them the right place to do the wrong thing, right? Gently re-guide, gently distract. We forget. I always told toddlers, we'd say, use your words, right? Oh my gosh, if I could tell you how many times I tell my teenagers to use their words, use your words. Just tell me. I don't know what you're doing. I don't know. Just tell me what you're doing, because they'll get so mad at me when I'm not understanding what they're doing. You must use your words with me. Tell me. I don't want you to do this. I want you to do this, right? But we have to respect them as humans. They're not little kids anymore. And that's what they're saying in their head constantly is like, God, I'm not a little kid anymore. And in our heads, we're like, you're acting like a little kid. I think this is what comes up. We got to
So
remind
true.
our
Yep.
teenagers.
So, Mary, we talked we had this skewed towards teens, but obviously, most everything that we've talked about is relevant for little kids too. You know,
100%.
they may not be teens yet, but all of this is we want them to feel that autonomy, the connectedness, and we want them to feel good about the choices they're making and redirect them in the choices that are not so great. So,
Yes. And
lots of
real
great
quick,
information. Yep.
in the chat, I just want to address this. How can we make kids feel happy when they are coming home or make
Mm,
home a happy place? First of all, ask them that. How can we make home
yeah.
better for you? But also remember, we can't make them feel anything. Just like when they were toddlers, we can't make them sleep, we can't make them eat. I don't make them feel anything. What I want to do is create an environment that's welcoming and supportive and non-judgmental. That's the number one thing that kids talk about is how mom and dad just judge everything, right? They get this face and they're like, oh, you shouldn't do that, or you should do this, or you shouldn't do that, or can't believe they're doing that. I mean, they hear everything, right? We want them to feel like they get to make mistakes and be a kid without that. So we're not making them feel anything. We are creating an environment where they feel like they have a say in what's happening. I realized when my kids were about 12 or 13 that I was making them do things that I hated. Pick up dog poop, take out the trash, unload the dishwasher, all the yucky things, right? So we started writing down like 15 things that I had to do every day. And then people got to pick what they wanted to do. And then we rotated every month or I think it was every week. but we rotated it so that no one had to do the yucky stuff all the time. Ask them, like, contribution is important. How can we do this together? Right? That's going to make them happy. It's not, it's not us. We don't build their self-esteem. They build their self-esteem.
Yeah, I think instead of thinking of it, how do we make them feel happy? How do we make them feel supported and that they belong and that they're
Yeah,
important? I think those
loved.
are all key. Yeah. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for your time tonight. We've learned a lot from you. And for those of
Absolutely.
you who are wanting it, we will definitely make the slides available. Those will be mailed out within the week. We'll mail out the recording and slides, access to those as well. And we will put the slide after we say our goodbyes. There will be a slide with how to get in touch with Mary in case you have follow-up questions or want to know about her practice and her counseling and such. So, but thank you. Thank you so much for the information, for being supportive of our community. And everyone,
Absolutely.
have a fantastic evening, a fantastic week, and we'll see you at the next parent chats. There's one coming up that's on if your kid has anxiety, especially having to do with school, how to deal with that. And then the next one is, I believe, the one that's on breath work, and it's about how to bring that practice into your home to help deal with stress and anxiety and just mental health in general. So don't miss out on those. You'll be getting reminders for those. Right. Good night, everyone. And I hope you have a fantastic week.